record just in case we do something useful. I'm gonna pull up the assignment, which is somewhere in these many, too many tabs that I have open.
Parked in the parking lot today, about to pay for parking. No tokens. 73%.
Okay.
Everything changed. So much money.
Here again is the project. So let's start with some brainstorming about how we could get started with this. Has anyone had a chance to think about this overnight? Little bit, not really.
Yeah, I was driving my car, not a little bit.
It doesn't leave you awake at night, just like, how am I gonna do this? Tossing and turning and thinking about code. You haven't reached that point yet? Oh, you will. All right, so there are a lot of requirements here. Where should we get started thinking? What do we want to think about? What do we want to start working on? Like I hinted yesterday, we don't just want to start writing code for this because we will have to do lots of refactoring as we recognize that we haven't fully considered everything from the get-go. So how do we start thinking about visualizing this in its entirety before we start coding?
Class.
Yeah, some kind of class diagram, UML diagram, something that is going to be your design. And we can see embedded in that class diagram whether or not some of the sections of those class diagrams represent some of the design patterns that we've covered. So we could at least start with a draft of some kind of UML diagram. And the way that I would start out with this is just by identifying what classes we are going to need. We can worry about whether they're abstract classes or concrete classes or what's in an inheritance hierarchy later. For now, let's just start by brainstorming what classes are going to be part of this final solution. And you can even, if that's too much to bite off, then you can think about what are the classes of classes? What are the groupings of classes? Kind of assign them a title that says we're gonna need some airplanes and just leave that as like a big group. You just leave that as a box that you're later gonna fill in with some concrete classes, maybe some abstract classes, but you can start with just a group of, we need some of these, whatever they're going to look like. And then you can iterate on this process as you go from the abstract concepts down to the more concrete, what are exactly these classes going to look like? So if we had to draw those big boxes, what would they look like? We need some kind of ticket class. So let's just start making a list. I'm not even gonna draw them in relation to each other yet. I'm just gonna make a list. Yeah.
Airport.
Airport.
Aircraft. Airline. Reservation.
What else is in here that we might want as a class? Not a field, not a method, but an actual class description. Type of what, sorry?
Like maybe the type of seat you get.
Type of seat?
That should be shown here.
Is that a class on its own? Who thinks that should be a class on its own? Seat.
Like first class. Economy or
I
something.
think that should be a subclass of reservation.
some kind of subclass of reservation, maybe? Should that be a class? Because we wanna do that with a decorator pattern probably.
It depends on what seat we're talking about. If we're talking like a first class seat or business class.
Yeah, maybe there's an
then-
abstract class that's a seat that has different kinds of seats that are associated with it.
You want people to want to say, you want to interface that, that's all say.
Yep. I buy that. What else?
Trick class to calculate the number of layers.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Some kind of trick? Would that be embedded within the ticket? Would the ticket contain that information, or do we want a separate class to contain that information?
No, wouldn't the trip have the ticket information? Because then the trip has multiple different like stops.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, but that's.
would that be embedded within the reservation, maybe? I'm not necessarily saying people are wrong, I'm just looking for additional arguments for that particular design. You can absolutely design this in a bunch of different ways, and there are gonna be pros and cons to those different designs. So just because I hesitate to write it immediately, again, does not mean that it's wrong. It just means that we need to really think about the design and justify. Because we don't just want to write a big long list and then try to work with it. We should start the justification for the design from the very beginning.
I guess my general approach was top down, where when the reservation contains a bunch of tickets, each ticket contains an airline, and that contains a aircraft.
Yeah.
Contains decorators for like seats and
Yeah.
other costs.
Yeah, so the next step after we think we have everything that we want here is to start arranging them either top down or bottom up or in some kind of hierarchy that shows us what objects are contained within other objects, what objects are made up of other objects in some kind of composition or an inheritance hierarchy or something. And we'll turn that into a UML diagram of some kind. Are there any other big classes that we think we need for this? Or is this complete? Remember, for those of you who are remote, I do have the chat up. If you have something that you'd like to contribute, you're welcome to type it in the chat.
Destinations.
So we have destinations here, but those are airport codes.
Guest code or something like that.
Yeah, so that's probably gonna be something like an airport. An airport would have, there'd be a destination, so that's probably a field within a class rather than its own class. It's a good idea, though, absolutely a good idea.
Oh, the flyer.
A person or a flyer or, okay,
The name, date of birth.
yeah. So what do we wanna call that class for clarity? Person, flyer,
Personal info.
land mammal,
Passenger, that's a good.
Passenger.
passenger, okay. I like that. I think that's slightly more descriptive than land mammal.
Creature. Creature of the night. You walk on two things.
So note that I'm still not immediately jumping into this. I'm really spending some time and trying to get people to think about what's here. Because if we were jumping into the code for this, at some point we would realize we're missing something that's pretty important. And if we'd made some kind of assumption in what we had already done, we'd have to modify those assumptions to account for this new idea that we'd come up with. And maybe that would be a lot of work. Maybe we'd have to do an entire refactoring process. And then I know students, you're gonna think, well, if I can get away without doing a full refactor, I could probably just do this in 5 minutes instead of an hour. So I'm gonna do a 5-minute solution, which makes it really ugly for a later change that you haven't thought of. So it's worth spending a little bit of extra time to just critically think about what are all of the classes we need. What's next? Do we want to start throwing these together into some kind of large scale UML diagram? Unless we think there are other classes that we are missing.
I mean, we could do like boarding class, but I kind of liked it as a field ticket.
Yeah. This is more kind of the basic idea. We're gonna find that there are some aircraft classes that are underneath this. We're gonna find that there are some airline classes that are underneath this, but at least we have the abstract classes or the interfaces set up. All right, what's the hierarchy here? Do we want to start top down or do we want to start bottom up?
Bottom up.
Yeah,
If your end goal is to get a ticket with all the information, then start there.
You can
work your way
you can
up.
make some bad assumptions probably if you start top down. It's more intuitive for a lot of people to start top down with something like, what's a reservation? The most basic thing here is we want to create a reservation and that's going to be made up of all of these other things, right? But if you start top down, it's easy to think of, well, the reservation is going to be made up of something that ends up being, multiple classes down that you'll have to go back and rearrange. If you work bottom up, you're gonna think, what are the smallest possible pieces here that aren't composed of or have inheritance hierarchies that are below them? What is the most basic building block? And then start putting together more and more abstract building blocks.
I kind of went opposite. I thought, what were like the abstract classes?
Mhm.
Where I kind of screwed them.
There's no right or wrong answer here. People's brains are gonna work differently. There are gonna be different preferences for how to do it. The question is just how do we want to go about it as a class? There is no right or wrong answer. If you do this a different way than we end up doing it in class, it's not wrong.
So I was thinking like some abstract ones where airplanes was an easy one. like,
Yeah.
The fields.
So aircraft is going to be abstract. So I'm just putting abstract there because we don't know if it's an abstract class or an interface yet. We haven't made that decision, but I'm just using the term abstract to say, we can't necessarily just make one of these. We need to further define. We need more information to be able to instantiate. If I told everybody in this class, build an aircraft, people would build very different aircrafts. If I told everyone in here, what's an airline? Now write an airline down on a piece of paper. Not everybody would write the same airline. Although if I asked everybody to write the name of an airport code, most people would probably write Spokane's.
GEGB.
Yeah, GEG. GEG. All right, do we want to do top down, bottom up? Oh, I guess before we go into that, what else do we mean by something that is abstract? Maybe we can go into a little bit more detail there, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page here. So it's something that we can't instantiate, but in a bit more detail with code, what does an abstract class contain? What does an abstract class not contain?
We'll have the fields that like all the subclasses will have, so aircraft, they're all gonna fly, have wings.
Yeah.
Have seats, have.
Everything that all aircraft share in common. And then these subclasses would further define or override that base behavior. In the airline class, do we need to fully define everything? Do we need each method to have something in it? No, why?
there's different ones you're gonna do.
Yeah, in the subclasses, we're gonna handle this differently, so we can just have abstract methods. Can we have abstract fields?
They are not assigned.
Yes, so they're not abstract, but we define what the field is without setting it to something. Because an airline doesn't, or sorry, an airline, aircraft doesn't have a certain number of rows to it. I can't say the number of rows of all airlines are 18. Maybe that's a particular aircraft, but it doesn't share in common between all of those things. All right, let's start actually drawing this diagram. We actually have to make the decision now, top down or bottom up. Bottom up? All right, so if we're looking at all of these things, what is the lowest level of class of picking these? What doesn't have any other class contained within it or made up of it.
Probably passenger. I
Steve
feel like
is
passenger, cause C could mean like depending on the class, like first class, what business class. That's what I think of when I think of C. Person, I mean, it's just a guy, it's just like a person, you know?
That's like the lowest.
There's nothing special about that
Like a
person.
first class.
You're just one you're just one person in his cog that's.
So some seats and some passengers. We do know that the reservation's kind of gonna be at the top, right? The reservation, there's gonna be one of these reservations and it's gonna be composed of some things. So we know that we're not writing reservation in a bottom-up fashion. So what's next? What's the next level? Or is there other stuff down here at the bottom?
I think that's the bottom, but
At least
I'm lost in what the passengers.
so.
Yeah,
I think we just have a field of like the passengers info in the ticket class.
we could.
All we just need is name, right? Or
Name.
So one thing to note is if we want this to be extendable, what happens if the aviation rules change and we need more information about a passenger? Maybe their driver's license number, maybe some other information. If the aspects of this are just fields in a ticket, then what do we need to change when that happens? We actually need to go make changes to non-associated classes. Is ticket the only place where that information is going to be in this hierarchy?
the reservation too.
Yeah, maybe. We don't know. We'd actually have to go through all the classes and check, where is this information? If we have a passenger class and we just compose all of these things of an associated passenger class, then as we add new information to the passenger class, that will unlock the ability to manipulate that in other classes, which will be much easier, kind of easy, it'll perforate to that without having to worry about where are we pulling this from? We need that information in a bunch of different places. So I still think passenger is a good design to have,
That makes sense.
especially as a prototype. It's better to have more classes than fewer classes, because classes are easier to extend in particular hierarchies. Whenever you have composition, whenever you have inheritance, whenever you have. I think those are the main two that I want to talk about, but. Best to have more classes. I'm probably gonna pause here for a bit, because here's where we're gonna start to diverge. People's implementations may change a bit, so I hesitate to throw everyone the right way or the same direction. So maybe over the next 10-15 minutes, feel free to talk to your neighbor as you do this, but design some kind of UML diagram. And you can make a different one from the person you're talking to. But try to figure out what makes sense from these classes. How are they going to interrelate? How are they going to communicate to each other? Where is their composition? Where is their inheritance? Which we call generalization. And then what were the associated relationship diagrams or relationship arrows between those classes? So draw an associated UML diagram. Once you have that, you can also think about what are the associated subclasses of airports? What are the associated subclasses of aircraft, of airline? How do these interrelate? Once you've done that, you can make an actual class diagram out of it. So take each one of these classes that you have the associated arrows of and turn it into an actual class diagram where you have fields and you have methods. And actually think about what are the fields and methods of each one of these object types. If we go back to our UML set of slides, I can also show you basically the small class diagram and the larger class diagram that has those fields and methods in them. any large scale questions, you're welcome to reach out and ask. If you're remote, feel free to private message me in chat. Or private message each other if you find someone you can work with. Anyone have any questions? Anyone having trouble getting started?
See, my. So if you're like gonna be positive. Yeah. But it was certain.
I almost feel like it has to be there.
Or at least. A glass above the aircraft, because we need to make sure that. Yeah. So let's make sure that the seat is valid for the aircraft. Oh, we checked that, so we want to do the seats, so. Yeah. Yes.
You guys see the bottom of this wall?
Oh, no, kind of guy.
This is kind of what I was thinking, like seat at the very bottom, just like composed of. But it's associated with. Yeah. I'm just gonna make two different airplanes.
Sorry, can you, what did you say?
Sorry, cheap and luxury. I'm just gonna have like airplane class, that's probably just the either super class. And I don't know if it's gonna be an interface or just well, it's abstract. So. And then I'm just gonna have two subclasses, a cheap and expensive plane. And both of those are gonna have seats. And for seats, I'm just thinking. I feel like with the decorator size, it was a good way to get that price of these, right? Like you're adding on a bunch of aspects of it. Yeah. So I was trying to think of a good way to where to use that. So maybe like a seat class is a good place for like, oh, is it by the window? If it costs more, or if
it's first class, all these different factors that like add price to it.
Like a
Loop side.
for C.
Yeah, but I'm not sold on that. I think they need that place to use. the deck.
I feel like the only real factor in the C cost would be the position.
Thinking of just like, kind of like how our second lab,
You can't have multiple
create like
of those
class like in
types.
the airport,
Yeah.
aircraft, then I'm thinking.
So maybe you might
It has to be
have that.
extendable. So if I do it like that, I just set a. I just set a.
I've just been looking at things on the thing here.
You would have them in
To
here
start with.
You can easily add more of them to the interface.
And here's.
And then you can start to swap out the associated
Could
aircraft.
be used
So let's say
to
that in a reservation that is supposed to depart tomorrow, the aircraft of that reservation
With
is out of
the
service.
ticket.
How easy would it be to swap out the
So I think that
aircraft
would be
associated with that reservation with
The
another
class. Of your seats.
That should be something that is really simple to do
Maybe the
if we design our code well.
location of your seats.
So, like,
So you're thinking of putting that as which
That'd
line?
be possible, when we talked about at runtime during the meeting, we talked about that as the first strategy. So if we
Because at the very
have
bottom,
a
I'm thinking like
behavior
seat, right,
associated
so.
with, fly and the associated
Field and
aircraft,
methods.
can we swap out one aircraft for another?
So I think
Implement its
field,
flights, and that way
just like
you fly
location,
that aircraft instead of
is it open?
That is a reasonable place to put the strategy pattern.
So like if. Aircraft out of service, then, and then this.
We don't actually have to implement it, that would be more of the driver or the main class that does something like that. So we want to
Would that
design
be
it in such a way
ticket,
that
you
swap.
I think passenger,
Right.
like you said, it. Or
So
like,
during
it
runtime,
doesn't seem too
we can
useful,
adapt.
right now it just has two fields.
We're gonna have other,
Right,
make other aircrafts. Let, have it be very simple.
Flyers go to birds.
Make it very simple.
So I think for
So
passenger,
say I have five.
We just have two fields, right?
aircraft, say I want to add a new one.
Yeah.
Make it so.
Yeah,
sharing
no, I think
that
passenger on the
makes
same
the process to make new aircraft very simple.
as a.
Yeah, and how are we going to do that?
And with an interface or interface.
I think we're gonna want some kind of class,
Have that,
like,
right?
Aircraft.
Bird, the name of the field and no methods.
Make a base aircraft class and then have a base aircraft class and then have an
Have that seat, I'm thinking.
interface that
Doesn't
says
make
like
too
what
much.
an aircraft
So
will
maybe
maybe
just
just
have
have C.
fields.
we saw with ducks in the strategy pattern that we made our own behavior algorithm, flight behavior. So that when we asked a particular duck to fly, we could swap out the associated behaviors as needed. If we do the same
For
thing
C,
with
I'm thinking,
aircraft
you know,
flying,
what methods and
we
fields.
could
and I'm
possibly
thinking, like,
swap out an aircraft,
location,
have their
and whether or
associated
not-
flight method be called instead, because you're swapping out a flight
I don't know
behavior.
how important that is for this, but I'm thinking when the.
So maybe we
I go
want
to
a
an
flight
airplane
behavior class
Purchase my ticket,
in
right, that's
addition,
the only two things.
that has
I'm really
different
worried about.
kinds of flying
Then-
behaviors.
Whether or not it's first class, which I guess.
I'm having trouble seeing the difference between
Sort of
ticket
front
class
end.
and a reservation. It seems like everything in a ticket class would be a reservation class.
Yes, that is by design. So a reservation you could have a single reservation for your entire family. That is made up of multiple tickets. You have you and a significant other and children, and those are all under the same reservation. So that when you go, scan your app to board the plane, you just scan, swipe, scan, swipe, scan, swipe, scan, and then everyone can board at the same time, because it's all
Well,
under
this-
one reservation,
I think
even though there are multiple.
For C, you
tickets
need
under
to be
that
more
reservation.
specific for the location though.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because if it's front, middle, or back, then that's only for a single call seats.
So have one for location and one for type.
You would want, yeah, like seat class.
Yeah.
And then there, I don't know, you generally, in the planes I've been in, I've seen.
On the other.
4 seats per row.
That's up to you. I'm just looking for a single instance of the strategy pattern somewhere.
So
But for extendability,
like,
if you design
it's,
something
you know,
where there
2
should
and
be
2
multiple
on each
behaviors,
side of the
then maybe
aisle.
you want.
And then depending on the size of the plane, you know, then there will be more rows of that. Yeah.
Think of it like an
Or even if you
What
got a big
kinds of
plane,
algorithms
like
determine any
could have
associated behavior. So like
3 columns of 2.
when you're boarding the
class
aircraft, depending on the airline
You know,
that
like
you use, they
you're
have slightly
big,
different
like,
boarding
3
systems,
column
different names associated.
Fine.
So
But
maybe
each plane
as
can
part
have
of that, you want
rows of columns that
a
have
subclass of
right.
the airline be a class called board method.
Should I see,
And then
see
you
class
want
like
to
the
have
any of that, or
a
should it
board
just
method behavior
return its
class
location as like an
that you
X1?
leave out, and then when you go
Um,
to call
well,
a particular reservation's board
so
method,
I think
it will
we should
figure out
stick with
which
the location.
associated airline it is,
using
and then
your
use
line.
that
So,
airline's board
You know,
behavior
your row
to board the aircraft.
letter. Oh, yeah, your seat number. So like first class.
I think it's like by design, so you buy.
One, two, three.
Yes.
But so just like what we used to have where it'd be just random, so you go in and have to get to your seat. That was better than what we have now.
Yes, boarding a plane from front
So
to
it's like
back.
the class inside the
decision.
seat.
Where's the intelligence?
I wanna know.
Where's the efficiency?
Oh,
Who thought of this?
There was a well thought out plan.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Make money somehow.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah,
all
you-
money driven and not efficiency driven.
Uh-huh.
What if the
I
user
wouldn't know,
doesn't
I don't
get
know,
to
I don't know
choose
what the
this,
same
they only
experience
get
is
to
like
choose
in there.
class, and it will put it in them.
You should
into the next
have,
available
or you should
seat.
design some kind of efficient boarding system and have one airline called efficiency.
Not always.
Supports your airplanes,
Uh,
freaking correct.
You don't get to choose.
You know what, that's actually hilarious.
They could-
Do you want to make a lost baggage?
Yeah, I've only heard from.
Just,
Now I-
thought yours being like, don't like you and lose your baggage.
Actually, now I wanna have like
And
a
you don't apply on
conflict
Delta,
behavior,
apply on Delta.
depending on,
It's just-
depending on
I flew on
the
BJ
airline, it
once.
depends on how competent they
They're
are.
like 13.
Everyone named Dave.
Because it's like just.
You guys really want to know why? No, and then if you have the lightning, if you have like one stuff, this video,
when I
like the
got
lightning
across
McQueen, fucking the suitcase going down. You're like, if you have that suitcase,
For like
you're
a
immediately
location.
getting your luggage, immediately, just because you're that guy.
Negotiate with it,
You guys want to know why you were from that.
the row and the number.
The real reason, because the modern airline build.
Here we go, here we go.
Because when they fly, they have a angle of
Okay,
attack
so-
where it's more efficient when the CG is at.
Well, you're looking at
For
Alaska,
economy
that's a great
reasons. So if you board from rear, if everyone loads
Yeah, this is what
out-
I, no, but I mean like just to see what the seats look like.
And
Yeah,
I think.
but yeah, so
there's a
yeah,
couple
like first
times
class
where on the news where
for.
the airplane, which they unload front.
Okay, so this is the same, but let's see, yeah,
The
there's an
whole
extra-
front just lifts up.
Yeah.
row here first.
That's exactly what happens when you disembark, right? Is that everybody in the front leaves and everybody in the back is still there. So if that were common, I would think that would happen all the time.
No.
They have to.
Heard us all.
They
I
do
like
want
farms and seats, used to scare the shit out of me.
We shouldn't try to do anything.
No, I'm talking about in general, I like having leg room.
Yeah.
So
I remember.
I guess my question is.
Yeah.
Right, we have to, so we want it to be.
If you want to make it very special,
So
pay
we
the higher.
want the seat
Yeah.
classes to decide that taking the roads are.
So you can watch it.
Like.
Everybody else.
Where is the boarding plane? Each seat class is where it's not the most beautiful. Or.
Meanwhile, I'm supposed to have whatever else they
Does that
have.
make sense?
They're so bad. Yeah.
I
Be
have-
careful of overcomplicating your design with these ideas, though. I think it's very easy to get distracted and start making unnecessary complications. to things.
That's-
So while I do want to leave it, I want to say,
Airline,
we're
I think,
design it the way
five,
they
like,
want.
Say we're
Don't
probably
overcomplicate, keep
I
it,
think
keep it
with,
simple.
with
I think
whether
later today,
your seat is just
I'm
given
gonna
to
write
you
a
or
rough
if you
draft
pick your
and
seat.
then I'll.
I think the easiest way to do it right
Sounds good.
And see if I need any.
Pick your
I'll probably write a rough.
Right. So that's what I'm saying, like, we're starting bottom up,
Cause
right?
right now, the
This is
class,
very
I have an
high.
idea of what I want to do.
So in the C
Eighth
for like yields and methods.
So I'll probably look at the,
You don't
I'll
want
probably
it to
look
be
at
that
the
design.
seats. I'll probably look at that, give me a better idea.
Seats there are.
Right now,
It
that's
just
the
tells
like,
you
the
that-
first stuff like happens that you could do.
That's the, this is open to use, so that's
Do
specific.
any groups
And
have a
like,
reasonable
assuming it's
outline at this
like
point?
if I was
Do
trying
you
to.
feel like you at least have a good
You know, I
start
can't
to an outline?
The very bottom part.
Alright, well, we can keep going, and maybe at the start of next class or the start of a couple classes from now, someone can share their design.
Well, I
And justify their design, so if there'd be some good outcomes to that, if you're able to put what you have up there and get some constructive criticism from the rest of the class or from me, that might be really useful and helpful. And I think it also might help people who are struggling to do the design process to see someone else's thought process.
Maybe pick your brain about this
Yeah.
seat thing.
Yeah.
But
do you have going on?
So we're starting at the very bottom, and we're gonna start with C.
Yeah.
right? And so we're thinking for like fields, it should have its location and whether or not it's.
Well, they should design.
Okay.
And we're just starting there.
Airplanes the long side.
And when we were going to think of like location, each plane is gonna have different rows and columns.
Like this.
Right,
So
so,
the array of some kind that represents the seats.
yeah, so I have like
Another.
an inherited structure of like an airplane, and then it's split off into two concrete subclasses. Like a cheap one and an electric one. Sure, so would you just put like in the concrete one, it just constructs its seat arrangement? And then the seat one itself just has the locations.
What parameters would it take for that? Would it take the number of rows, the number of seats per row?
And then like.
Initialize them all to not currently occupied.
That's good. That's kind of what we're.
Yeah, yeah, and then some number of rows that are first class. If that ends up being a really long parameter list, is there something that we did to be able to do something about a really long parameter list?
So it tips the strategy. So we push it back. So we push it back.
Builder.
With builder?
Yeah, I don't know if we really wanna build seats, I think we definitely wanna be able to builder the reservation as a whole.
Okay.
But yeah, after we've come up with all of this, we can start to design around where the design pattern is gonna come in.
Yeah.
It's a very good start.
Okay. Like what?
That would be
Uh,
a great
like
introduction to flying.
Ran it through design, like, so start with seats and it just has location against the best. And then like the concrete subclasses, which are the, just the planes themselves. We'll create like a 2D array in there.
Oh,
And
this
it will
back in the day.
create its own columns and seats for columns.
We're looking at
Based off
airplanes
whatever that.
when
one
they
was.
loading it.
So showing up the weight
Visualize
and
that array
balance
and set all
of
the
the
seats.
airplane.
Right.
It's so common.
Yeah.
And so would that airline then be each echo to like is open and all of that?
I haven't gotten up to airplane, so airplane.
Yeah.
And then plane, I hate that.
They conspired with the pilot and stuff to play prank on me, where they
But yeah, see your question.
nosedive quickly, and I just quickly shot up, feeling my stomach. I'm like, oh my god, we're going down.
It is so common.
that-
I'm scared,
That
I'm
was cool.
looking at the image is like, there's so many. Just like, yeah, you know, he's a complete prank, John.
Yeah.
Hey.
I can say, this is my house, so.
My face was white. I had no idea what was going on.
Hey, see,
This one's really weird.
It's just flat here.
that bad of a weight imbalance, like it's a plane.
It's always funny that.
Like the plane's a big thing,
Like
like.
all these schools.
Planes
score
decide
time.
to fly.
You would get red.
You can at least change the server, you can change it for.
Right. I
change that. Let me add you to this. And then I have a.
Reply method should then be called go in the sky.
Let's think of this.
Does it go in the sky? Yes.
How does this go in the sky?
Aircraft.
And I'm just gonna have a secret vote in there,
The invite, so
and-
you know, and that's but.
whoever gets the vote, gets the vote, I don't know, just have like one sub in there, that does not have those select behavior.
We can make some George Carlin jokes about going in the plane instead of on the plane.
But yeah, I, as far as that goes, I like the idea.
Yeah,
It says, I'm going in the plane, it's gonna get a little windy up there.
that makes sense to me, because I'm very implies that it has like concrete seats and such.
You know what, I'm also putting entertainment, you know, what entertains the guy?
So yeah, because then.
I would like the behavior.
Behavior.
I might.
Be entertained.
Yeah.
Be entertained.
Well, I'm lost in where to go next.
I have a feeling.
So we figured out.
That would be a reasonable place to put a strategy.
And the airplane.
What?
Yeah, so a real broad idea when I was
Do I
in
get the
airplanes,
next?
I was like, oh, that's.
It would be very easy to overcomplicate that,
And
though.
then
So
I
if
was
you're
gonna
doing,
make
if you're gonna
two
incorporate something
subclasses
like
of
that,
that.
do it for a
That
reason,
are-
do it because that's where
I'm
you
just
want your
kidding.
strategy
It's
to happen.
like expensive plane and then we could do a fast plane.
Ours
just
feel
whatever you want.
Yeah, because that's, yeah, see, goes to the.
Oh, yeah.
Name them like, he said, I don't like the Boeing.
And then take off this.
So that'd be really. We're gonna have to work on like fields and planes.
You get to, behavior, you get to.
Plane.
Yeah, Pixar's.
Or like the different, like the plane subclasses. This would be,
And then you get like, I don't know, like you see those new ones that have these.
really need
Up
to
in the rock and
have them to define.
screw it.
We're down to the last few minutes, so does anyone have any
So-
questions that I can answer that would help you to be able to get started with this over the next
Well, that's
couple
what
days?
Step one from the airplane.
Ready to do, right?
Create a 2D, right? And then just initialize. the
Well-
Real world model, that's a solution for you.
Well, that, funny thing I gotta give you, I kinda need the rag to make the pancake.
Through there.
I'm just trying to figure out, there's probably more complicated. The step-
It's not out print ticket, this is what it is, that's it, that's the entire.
You wanna eat with me too, I can make a reservation to you.
Right.
Yeah,
But it does, yeah,
And
that
then
is
it's for
important.
the.
We need a bus field, it's like a seat.
That's a good point. Yeah, so.
So that you can.
Well, I guess that could be. In
Maybe
airline logos with staple. We just fucking don't care about. it.
Jimmy's the cheesier one, we're going to.
And then just give it a cost.
We could do something.
I was thinking,
where
well, no,
that's
but
where
we do need this change this to space first.
we could do like,
Space flight.
if it's an A class, just that first row, it's first class and it's the double price.
What if we define
What
what
if
first
it's
class
at-
is
what
instead
if-
of the.
what if
aircraft?
One of the things is just a helicopter, and then you have to like.
Yeah, like that's what I
Amount
was
of
gonna,
seats there are.
that's what I was figuring out if I wanted to say that, but we could make it
That might make it hard.
arrays. One
Give me
for
some
first
planes.
class, one for the other class. And then you all.
That's an actual plane.
That can each have.
You don't have to- Plane too.
So yeah.
I used to know fictional
Like you can
planes.
Reservation,
price
we're
of
now
the
22.
first class, whatever you want.
I don't
I don't
know
have
the
worries
American code, but the Sherpa.
about the normal.
So.
So
You
you
can
can
do one, yeah, another whole.
Or you can set it to be related.
Every, all one seat.
Just to save on the
first
memory.
class.
we just put a condition inside of the inside of the ad class.
Yeah, that's not,
What it is.
That's the
It's multi-
First class is actually.
Who the heck are these? Oh, like,
Like what you're saying
yeah,
is.
that's the right one.
okay,
I know,
So, like,
everyone else is the wrong.
You're setting.
Or the left.
the left.
The same across the board. But if it's a first class seat.
Yeah, it doesn't say city.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, they don't tell me. They just don't have wrong.
Basically just have like the airplanes themselves.
All right, we are out of time. Feel free to stick around and
That's
keep
what
working
he
if you'd like to.
Was,
But
yeah,
we'll
so.
come back to this in a year or two and see if someone has a reasonable outline you'd like to share with the class, just so we can have a discussion about that particular UML diagram.
Oh, yeah, cause I guess we only need one.
Give you
day,
one day,
Because we could, I guess, we don't need it to be extremely realistic to the point where it's
See you all tomorrow.
We're not gonna be able to do that unless we wanna just try three different things.
Well,